report actually, here we go. There actually had two reports, one on the primary, one on the general. I'm going to focus on the primary 2020, but both reports were previously a number of months ago published, and they cover San Mateo County. And so I'm going to go through this research. Some of you may have seen it in the past, some of you may not have, but I think it's helpful to kind of pull it all together and present it to the group. And then, as Diane said, we have upcoming research as well that we're excited about in terms of publication. But this right now is our outreach and voter education report, which was focused on all VCA counties, including San Mateo. Okay, I'm going to jump in. And the sun will hopefully have moved by the time you see my face in full again. Let me share I can share, I do have share screen. Okay. There we go. You should be able to see slides, correct? Okay. Let me just get these. There we go. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, and we see your slides, Mindy. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And I mentioned, well, actually, I'll talk about it in a moment when I get into methods. So again, talking about outreach and voter education in San Mateo County. There were two reports, one specific on this topic, one specific to the primary, one specific to the general. They're both available on our website. I'm happy to put the links in the chat after I'm done presenting. Because we're going into a primary election, I assumed that talking about 2020's primary outreach and education will probably be more helpful than the general, and especially considering the 2020 general election had a lot of unique aspects to it when it comes to outreach, right, by the counties because of COVID. So I'm focused on primary, but know that both sets of information are available in two different reports on our website. Okay, so I don't need to tell anybody here on this call, but I'll just cover really quickly. You know, the VCA, of course, as San Mateo County is a VCA county, requires that counties conduct outreach to community members to educate them about the voting changes in their county and encourage them to use all of those new options. And also, as part of the Voters' Choice Act, counties must establish a VEOAC and a LAC to advise the county elections office on electoral access, right, for voters with disabilities and voters with limited English proficiency. What is unique to San Mateo County is that you all have a VEOAC, right, which is very well established, working, you know, quite substantially together since 2018. But this is a general requirement, right, of the Voters' Choice Act. You all have just taken it even further in terms of your collaborative efforts. For this report, we looked at three main research questions, two of them for time I'll cover today. So what voter education and outreach efforts did VCA counties engage in for the 2020 primary election? And again, every slide or every data table that I show you will have data for San Mateo County. So you'll see the data for San Mateo County and then also see the other counties as well, side by side. Two, what role did the Voting Accessibility Advisory Committee, the VEOAC, play and other partners play, right, in the 2020 primary election? We also, again, there's a third question here that I'm not talking about today, specific to the priorities around the citing process, the citing of vote centers. So if you're interested in that, that's also covered in the reports. And before I kind of go further, I just want to emphasize my appreciation for all the counties that participated, and very much so for San Mateo County. This report was really reliant on the surveys that we sent out to the 15 VCA counties during an incredibly busy year, right, for both the primary and then the general election. And San Mateo County, as always, was really wonderful to work with. Sarah being one of them, who's on the call right now, you know, answering very long surveys, follow-up after follow-up, and really appreciate all of the data that San Mateo provided and all of the counties provided. So I'm going to give you an overview for just the 15 counties. Oh, do you have a question? Hello? Nope. Okay. I'm going to give you an overview of just some bullet points here of just the 15 counties combined, and then I'll go slide by slide and show you San Mateo specific data. So hopefully that makes sense. So for the 15 counties, these are some of the key findings for outreach and voter outreach and voter education. So we found that VCA counties increased voter outreach and education efforts to inform voters about changes related to the VCA. This is in 2020. And of course, some of the counties that adopted in 2020, 5 of them, including the San Mateo County Elections Office, had adopted in 2018. So we acknowledge that for those counties, 2020 was the second round, if you will. But we understand that with the implementation process, counties increased their outreach and education. There were differences in terms of what they did for outreach and education, of course, and that's where the details we'll get into in a moment. Next bullet point here, VCA counties employed multiple methods to inform voters about those about the VCA related changes. All VCA counties reported having a plan to inform voters with disabilities about voting method changes. VCA counties targeted outreach to historically underrepresented groups. And some VCA counties were unsure, though, of the most effective communication methods. So they engaged in multiple types of communication efforts, but some acknowledged that they weren't exactly sure how effective those communication methods were in the end, right, for the election. And then some key findings specific to the VEOAC, as we had an element of this report was specific to voters with disabilities. So some VEOAC committees were more effective than others based on self-reports from the VCA counties themselves. All VCA counties worked with various stakeholders on VCA implementation. And I just want to note, and we note this in the report, but even though partnership, of course, is a key element of the Voters' Choice Act and it is required, we didn't take anything kind of for face value, right? So we knew what the intent and the written law of the VCA was, and then we asked counties just what they actually are doing. So some of these bullet points might seem pretty self-evident or obvious, but we wanted to, understand what counties were actually doing and what they weren't doing and how they varied and so forth. VCA counties reported that collaborating with stakeholders enhanced VCA implementation. Partnerships helped counties inform voters about VCA. Partnerships provided counties with many benefits, but many counties also told us that they saw room for improvement in those partnerships, and counties balanced many priorities when selecting voting location sites. And then we had 2 overarching recommendations for counties that are considering adopting the VCA or continuing their implementation of the VCA. We're not saying that this specifically relates to San Mateo County, but our 2 overarching recommendations were to increase investment in voter outreach and education, streamline messaging across counties to have a greater impact, and then 2, develop a VCA community coalition early in the VCA implementation process. Again, that does not necessarily, because you already have your VEOAC, although certainly, the county and the coalitions could decide to go in different directions if they wanted to. Okay, jumping in. So we asked about the EAP, Election Administration Plan, right, which is required part of the Voters' Choice Act, if you're not familiar with that. And we wanted to know from counties themselves, again, this is self-reported, and we also acknowledge in the report that because it's self-reported, we can't say, 100% from a research perspective, exactly what happened in each county. We're reporting what counties are telling us. Not every county for their EAP in 2020 reported getting feedback first off from the SOS, because the SOS is supposed to give feedback on the outreach component of the election administration plan. San Mateo County, and I just kind of crudely here in every slide highlighted San Mateo County, so it's easier for you guys to find. San Mateo County did get that feedback. We have the date there of when it was finalized, but what we think is helpful is the number of public comments. So the county reported to us that they received 5 public comments. And, some counties received 0, some counties received 1, some counties received, like Santa Clara, much more. We don't know why there's that variation, and we don't dare to kind of step into kind of guessing, because that's not our role as researchers, and why there's that variation. But we think it's helpful, right, to report that information. Eligible voters, we're just simply here doing a math in terms of, what the eligible voters are as of February 2020. And I should say that's the most current report leading up into going into the primary election. VCA County adjustments to voter outreach and education. So what kinds of things did they do in 2020 that was different? So San Mateo talked about increasing their digital outreach, their traditional outreach methods. And you'll see that, again, every county is kind of different here in terms of what they said they did that was an adjustment, right, to their VCA or for the first time doing the VCA. just because the county, as you see here for San Mateo, didn't mark that they increased it. For San Mateo, it gets a little more complicated, and I know they're on the line, and I'm happy to, at the end, if they want to talk about any of this, if there's any questions about it. Because of 2018, that makes it a little bit more complicated for San Mateo, because a county may have increased in 2018 first adopting, but then in 2020 be a little different. And again, there's lots of explanation and text around this in the report, but I'm just going through quickly on the charts. So voter outreach and staffing budget in the 2020 primary election. Again, you'll see from Amador to Tuolumne, the information here just in the basic form. Do they have a dedicated staff person? San Mateo does. Total staff hours for VCA outreach. Of course, there's a big variation in these counties in terms of their size and their overall budget. So, from 40 staff hours in Amador to 500 plus in El Dorado, to 100 in Nevada, to 500 plus in San Mateo. And that was just the categories we broke it down. So we kind of everything kind of on the high end be 500 plus. Education outreach budget specific as reported by county, so 450,000 for San Mateo. As you can see, that is one of the largest budgets. Again, there's a big difference in the size of these counties and the number of registered voters. And so the next column there says calculated per registered voters. The county reported to us about $2.40 is what they spent out for outreach and education per voter. So that is, as reported by the county, that is the second highest. It's the second highest there. That doesn't mean that you don't want to see more or need to see more, of course, but we're just showing you as we report out what the differences are across the counties. And then actual spending was a little bit lower than the actual budget at 437 for San Mateo. And that's pretty common. Some counties overspent based on their budget, like Madera, 25 versus 15,000. And many counties ended up spending more, or at least a little more than what they originally had budgeted for outreach and education. And again, I'm going through this quickly, so forgive me. So VCA outreach methods by county election officials in the primary. So these are just groups as we kind of left it open for the counties to report the different kind of methods that they use. And then based on all of the responses, we group them into categories, right? So everybody said that they collaborated with groups. Everybody said that they used advertisements to some degree in the media. Almost everyone said they did outdoor signage. Everyone did social media. Everyone did signage at vote centers, except El Dorado there. Direct mail, yes. Direct digital communication varied by counties, as you can see there. And everyone said they did some form of community meetings. When you look at the report, and this is where it's, the richness of both reports, the primary and the general election reports here, is really in the details. And so we give a lot of quotes from counties kind of explaining these numbers, and it would take too long for me to go into that. But I want to kind of give you this overarching sense. And then if you're interested, invite you to, again, do that deep dive into the actual reports. So we have quotes from a lot of counties kind of explaining for them what a community meeting was, or how much they worked with community groups in collaborative efforts, that sort of thing. So you have a yes here, but then there's differences, of course, in how counties, actually carried that out. Okay, outreach methods for voters with disabilities. So again, we collected those answers, categorized them. So collaboration with community groups. Most counties said that they collaborated with community groups. San Mateo said that it didn't. This is specific for voters with disabilities. That was the question. Collaboration with groups focused on voting accessibility specifically, then yes, answered that. Advertisements in the media. You can see that most counties said yes, but not everybody said that they did, specific for voters with disabilities. Same thing with outdoor signage, social media, signage at vote centers, direct mail, direct digital communication, and community meetings. So next, methods for informing voters with disabilities about voting changes in the 2020 primary election. So here, from the elections office, directly through media, advertisements, social media, in collaboration with community groups. And with the here, San Mateo said yes to all of these. Not every county, as you can see, through social media or through the VEOAC. conducted, or at least said that they conducted outreach for voters with disabilities. So there's a wide variation here in terms of the outreach methods specific for this voter group. Workshops conducted by election offices in the 2020 primary election. And again, I want to emphasize big differences across counties in terms of population, and we actually calculate that in here in terms of the table. So the third column in where it says number of workshops for voters with disabilities, San Mateo reported 1, other counties reported 1, some 2, 3, and then you can see, maybe not a surprise, but Los Angeles reported 66. Number of eligible workshops, number of eligible voters per workshop. And these again are specific for voters with disabilities. You can see that kind of, it's not a per capita, but you might want to think about it that way, but that kind of calculation. So for Los Angeles County doing 66, it ends up being 93,000 for them. Number of workshops, and this was part of a combined question, so that's why I have data here for limited English proficiency in this table. But 4 for limited English proficiency in San Mateo County. Other counties ranging from 1 to 2 to 3 to 22 in Los Angeles. And then also there's that calculation in terms of number of workshops for voters with limited English proficiency, based on the eligible voter population. So it's 126 for San Mateo. Outreach methods for historically underserved groups. This is here we're asking about the demographic and geographic reach. So as counties saw it, what were the reach of their efforts? So you can conduct efforts, but what was the reach of their efforts? And so again, really big variation here in terms of what counties said that how counties felt like they reached different voter groups. So for non-English language groups, San Mateo said yes. I think we're about 7 out of 15. Sorry, it's down at the bottom. 7 out of 15 said the same thing in terms of these VCA counties. Racial and ethnic groups. San Mateo didn't note specifically feeling like they had targeted racial and ethnic groups. Residents with disabilities, yes. Youth, yes. We define youth 18 to 24, but some counties define that a little differently. And then seniors, yes, as well. And then VCA specific outreach and targeted communication efforts. So then we ask counties to tell us what groups, if they specifically targeted any of these groups. And we had been getting a lot of input and feedback asking if counties were specifically targeting Black, Indigenous, or formerly incarcerated. And so we sent out an additional question to counties to make sure that we are capturing these groups and it wasn't kind of getting lost in a broader question. And these are the answers that we received from counties. Again, kind of a mixed bag here, a wide variation in terms of whether counties specifically targeted. I want to emphasize it does not mean that counties didn't reach these groups, right? Or if they had a more general plan, that part of their general plan was to reach these groups, but asking if they specifically targeted these groups. So that's the difference. And I think it's an important distinction. I want to make sure that that's clear. So San Mateo County didn't report specifically targeting, these groups. Delivery effectiveness. So this is about the effectiveness of delivery methods, right? VCA County effective information delivery methods. Events, meetings, digital communication, print, language specific, and so forth. And I'm looking at time, so I'm going to hurry. Just a few more slides here. So under the voting accessible advisory committees section of the VCA, right, there of course is requirements for the type of outreach that's done there. With these groups, and I covered this a little bit at first, but I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So establish a VEOAC consisting of members of the community to partner with election officials to meet regularly to develop strategies for improving voting accessibility. VEOAC must be established no later than October 1st of the year prior. First VEOAC meeting must be April 1st, and then additionally, the SOS suggests a minimum of 3 to 5 members depending on the number of registered voters in the county. And so part of this report, again, was focused specifically on what types of outreach efforts were conducted with voters with disabilities. So that's why we have a separate section here. So community outreach. So VEOAC roles in the education and outreach strategy of a county for the 2020 primary election. Again, variation here. Most counties saying that the VEOAC played a role in community outreach. A kind of a mixed bag. About half the counties said that the VAC played a role in the administrative kind of implementation. And then community knowledge and feedback, getting community knowledge, getting that feedback back on the implementation process. 11 out of 15 counties said that they received that from the VAC specifically, or that was a VAC's role in their county. And then VAC's role in improving services for voters with disabilities. Community outreach, let me just make sure I'm not losing my mind. Yeah, same categories to try to make it simple. Here again, varied widely in terms of community outreach, implementation, and then community knowledge and feedback. And here's San Mateo County said yes to all of these. And then next, role played by Language Accessibility Advisory Committee. So I wanted to put this in as part of my presentation today, because I know a lot of you, of course, are working with the LACs or work with communities that are limited English proficient. So here, the role played specifically by the LAC, as reported by the county elections offices. So community outreach, implementation, community knowledge, and feedback. And I think if this is helpful, if I give a little bit of a guide here for all of these questions that have these three categories, the idea is to kind of parse out. Counties will often say, well, yeah, of course our LACs and our VACs, right, were helpful, or we worked with them, but in what ways were they helpful? In what ways did the counties work with them or feel that they were part of the overall implementation in the county? Okay, and then implementation and effectiveness. So now here we're actually directly asking counties the level of effectiveness they felt. This is their self-reported level of effectiveness of VACs. And so here's just some basic information. Again, we detail all of this out on the report, but the number of VAC meetings, the number of people on average as reported by counties in attendance. So San Mateo was 7. You can see that across all of these counties, they're not large numbers. I mean, with the exception of, if you consider it a large number, Fresno and Los Angeles. Some counties were quite small, 2, 5 people, right, on average. And there's lots of reasons for that. We're not making a judgment on that, but again, we're just reporting it. Public input on agenda items, all said yes. We also asked about a dedicated VAC page on a website. And as of at least when we were conducting this research, not all counties had that. San Mateo didn't have a dedicated page for the VAC on their website. We're not saying they should. We're just asking, right, if counties did have this information and reporting it out, if that makes sense. And that may have changed now for some of these counties. And then actually self-reported effectiveness. San Mateo said that they felt that the VAC was very effective. Other counties said moderately, some said extremely. We didn't have any reports of by a county that the VAC was not effective. But again, these are self-reports, right? So there may be a difference between how a county views the effectiveness of a VAC and how VAC members view it, or how external members in the county view the effectiveness. But at least in terms of the county's viewpoint, we thought it was helpful to be able to identify this level of variation. And again, in the report, some of these answers are kind of parsed out more with direct quotes from counties talking about why they thought it was very effective, why they thought it was moderately effective, what were some of the growth points, things that needed to be done in the future, that kind of thing. And I am almost done. VAC implementation and effectiveness. So now kind of parsing out whatever they said over here, whether it was moderately, very, extremely. And again, we did give the offer, there was an option to say that it was not effective, but nobody chose that. So whatever their answer was, now tell us the factors in the degree of effectiveness. So that's what this table is showing you. So was it the level of community outreach? Was it administrative implementation? Was it community knowledge and feedback? So for San Mateo County, they said all 3 were factors in the level of effectiveness that they deemed the VAC had in the 2020 primary. Well, I will note here is you'll see you'll see a lot of empty spaces here, right? A lot of categories were not all of 3 of these categories were selected, were a yes for all of these counties. You see a lot of non-yeses, if you will. And that does, if you look at the degree of effectiveness counties said that they had, you might look at that and wonder, why is there not much information given here, but county still felt like it was effective? And that's really up to the counties to discuss that with their community group. So maybe there's other categories, other information that counties didn't convey to us, right? So we're just reporting that out. VCA collaborative education strategy for informing voters about VCA related changes. So now this is about outreach partnerships. So did you conduct community meetings? Yes. Met with community leaders and voter advocacy groups. This is a no-brainer for all of you guys for here in San Mateo County because of the VEOAC and the level of outreach that all of you do. And yes, for San Mateo on creating the ongoing collaborative effort, right, with community leaders and voter advocacy groups. Every county basically said yes to everything. There's a few exceptions there. Again, what I think was interesting here is to read some of the detailed responses and some of the variation within that, right? Outreach partnerships. So this is partnership enhancement on the VCA voter outreach strategy. And we asked, okay, out of these categories, how did these different groups impact, right, or possibly enhance outreach in your county? So for community groups, I'll just say here for San Mateo, because this is a very busy chart and we spend a few paragraphs explaining it in the report. But I'll just use San Mateo County as the example. So for community groups, San Mateo County said community groups enhanced outreach, right? Provided feedback, provided resources. Government agencies said yes, provided outreach, didn't indicate feedback, but did indicate yes on resources. Private groups are basically defined as anything not a kind of public voter advocacy nonprofit group or government agency. So yes on outreach, no on, or at least didn't indicate on feedback, yes on resources, and then media, yes on outreach, yes on resources, and didn't indicate feedback. And I think what's interesting here again, if you want to see what's happening in other counties, you can see some of the variation across counties. And certainly in reading the different quotes in the report. Benefits and challenges of partnerships. So here is what are the most effective, not the only roles, but what are the most effective roles, not all roles, played by stakeholders as reported by counties. And so San Mateo County said yes to all of these groups. You can see not all counties said yes to that EAP was an effective role. EAP feedback, sorry, was an effective role, or their collaboration was effective, and so forth. And then benefits and challenges. So impact of stakeholder collaboration on the VCA implementation. So yes, stakeholder collaboration provided feedback on EAP VCA implementation, according to San Mateo. Again, not every county, right, said yes on this, about half did. Improving community trust, San Mateo said yes. Might be interesting to all of you as members of the VEOAC and considering the role and the partnership you have in San Mateo County, to see that only 7 out of 15 counties here said that stakeholder collaboration had an impact of improving community trust. In assisted with citing locations, only 6 out of 15 said that, and San Mateo is one of them. But again, there's going to be big variations across these counties in terms of why that wasn't marked. And then recruited vote center staff, only 2 counties out of 15 said that stakeholder collaboration specifically helped in recruiting vote center staff. All right. Benefits and challenges of partnerships. Again, still here, this is VCA County collaborative improvements for the 2020 primary. This is basically, we're asking what more could be done, right? So 5 out of 15 counties said more participation from community partners or community members. So just acknowledging that they wish they had more participation. And some of the quotes here are really interesting in the report. Again, I would direct you to look at that if you want to learn more. Most counties said that they wanted to see more robust LAC and VAC meetings or membership. So even if they rated their, which everybody rated it at least somewhat positively, right, in terms of the effectiveness of their VAC, even seeing their VAC as effective, they acknowledged in this question that they wanted to see more robust VAC and LAC meetings. Citing and vote center locations, that's where they thought that there could be more improvement in terms of collaboration around citing, most counties. San Mateo is an exception here. And then increased outreach or public meetings. A few counties here said that as well. I hope I said the other one right, by the way. The more robust, 2 out of 15 counties said they wanted to see more robust. Excuse me. I hope I said that right. Rushing through slides and collaborative. Well, they collaborated well. No improvements were needed at all. All right. And I think I'm almost done. Community meetings from, groups missing for voter outreach and education efforts. So what we did here is this was an open-ended question. We again explained this in the report. We didn't set categories. We open-ended. We wanted to see what counties felt were the groups that were missing, right, from their perspective. Understanding that, of course, counties have different demographics, right? Different groups that are active, different groups that are not active, and so forth. So here, San Mateo specifically said non-English language groups they felt were missing, or at least partially missing, right, from the outreach and education efforts that they conducted in the 2020 primary election. And then you see, again, a great variation across the counties in terms of what they indicated. And I'm done. That is the last table. I kept saying that was the last table. I lied, but now I'm done. And I just have a slide here kind of prepping for the June primary. If anybody wants to talk about kind of what to expect in the June primary, things like lower turnout, how will the impact of COVID and the changes in how people voted, the method of voting from 2020 possibly impact us in 2022. I'm happy to talk about that. But I, for now, am going to just ask, are there any questions on what I quickly whizzed through there in terms of all the tables before I stop sharing my screen? Anybody? Nope. That was easy.
Yep. Well, I'll ask a question.
Please.
And it's actually more about this last slide. So this the lower voter turnout. I think one of the concerns that a lot of us have in terms of the June primary is making sure that voters understand that there are a number of offices that will be decided in June and not in November. Mm-hmm. Any advice, any feedback on what you learned as to how we can better inform voters that, if you wait until November, it may be too late?
Well, I mean, I'll give you the 30,000 foot level. You all know your communities and there's a great variation across different community groups, right? Or can be sometimes, right, in terms of what messages work. But generally speaking, you know this, but turnout is much lower in primary elections than general elections. Primary elections are absolutely critical because they set the ballot. And I think part of the message is to say, if you're not going to vote in the primary, but you're voting in the general, you're not having a say in the ballot that you're going to be voting on, right? And everybody else is going to be voting on in the general. I think a big challenge, though, and I'd love to hear, your experiences in San Mateo, but generally speaking, a big challenge is getting other community groups to also work in the primary. Groups that work in the general, there's like a subset that actually do outreach and education in the primary. And you usually see more activity from nonprofit groups, community groups in a general election than you do in a primary. And you'll have kind of the groups that are always there, that are there no matter what the election is. And then you'll have groups that only kind of come into the work, right, in the general election. Mm-hmm. And so there's a message for voters, but I would say, even maybe more importantly, it's a message for your fellow possible collaborators, reaching out to groups that just really pay attention in the general and really making case for why you need them in the primary. And one really important case to make is not only is turnout lower, but it's usually even less representative. So nowhere in California or in this country, unfortunately, do we have in any given election a representative electorate, right? So the people that vote, whether it's high turnout or low turnout, you all know this, the people that vote in any given election, if you look at the demographics by age, race, income, you will see that population of voters doesn't look like the population, right, of the community. And the gaps in turnout are typically wider in a primary, relatively speaking. And part of that is people aren't thinking a primary is important. They're not aware of the primary. There's less activity around a primary, right? And so it's really critical to get as many of your potential collaborators, like I say, that might come into the general, to convince them to come into the fold in the primary election. because they can be often the keys to getting members of the community that are historically unlikely to participate in the primary. So I think that's what I would emphasize even more, Diane, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that is. I understand Mike Levinson has his hand raised. So
Okay.
Mike, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, also just to add on, I think if there was like a preface of some kind somewhere in the mailing materials that says because of the top 2 law passed in whatever year it was, this is not the same as primaries have been in the past. Anytime there's 2 candidates in a race, this is the general election. And that point has to be driven in somehow. But that wasn't my question. On the issue of the things that are missing in counties, I think just having a VEOAC, even if it doesn't work the same as ours, a lot of counties may not have thought of it. I mean, our experience was we had a community outreach event, and several people from the VAC and the elections office showed up, and no community members showed up. And then at our next VAC meeting, we discussed how we were going to reach out better, and nobody really had the skill set or the connections to do that. So, that's how the VEOAC kind of came into being, and how it functions mushroomed from there. But I think a lot of these VACs and LACs around the state are not thinking that way because they're just following what's available to them and not saying, well, if we can't do it, we have to do a better job. No, if you can't do it, find a different group that can do it.
Yeah, and I would just say, of course, VAC is a requirement if you're a Voters Choice Act county, but there's just big variation in, on how robust the VACs are in terms of their membership, their meeting, how much input they're giving into a county and so forth. But like you said, the idea, hopefully, even from our study, it's we're not passing judgment. We're just factually giving this information. We've been told by counties and others that it's helpful to kind of have this kind of rundown. And it potentially, will encourage additional, more robust efforts as a county deems that possible.
It's a different skill set. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and it's a challenge.
Working harder is not the issue. It's getting a different group of people in a different room to do the outreach.
Although that does take work.
Yeah, of course.
But I know what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a challenge in many counties. I've heard many registrars who have, done a lot to try to recruit, or at least they feel like done a lot to try to recruit, and they're still struggling to get a more robust VAC. So anyway, I was going to say, just made me think of something else too. Oh, Diane, just one other quick thing, if I may, about the primary and making the case for voters. The other thing is you can make the case, definitely, it's important to do so, but I think just reminding people there is an election, because the way primaries are set up and the way voter outreach is done by campaigns and candidates, it tends to be much more kind of targeted, and you have less information often that's directly reaching voters. So the message is definitely important, but I just want to emphasize this because sometimes I hear some groups that say, we really struggle, and I know this is the VEOAC, but we really struggle with the messaging, and that sometimes can be a barrier. Just getting out a reminder that there's an election and asking people to vote, even without the perfect case for why the primary itself is important, just reaching groups that often don't get touched in a primary, that campaigns and candidates don't reach out to in a primary because they're targeting, strategically who they want as their primary voters. Just that alone, it's a big factor. The lack of connection is a big factor why people sometimes just don't participate. I mean, it's more complicated than that, but since we're talking about messaging, that can be a big factor.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great input. Any last questions for Mindy? I don't see any other hands raised.
And I just wanted to check in with Sarah too, because I know I covered a lot of things that she directly gave input on when she was helping to fill out the survey for San Mateo County. And I was going through very quickly without, as I said, giving any quotes. I didn't know if she wanted to elaborate on anything. Not to put you on the spot, but I just want to
I would say, it was a very long survey. And
I don't expect you to remember all of it right now.
right, and 2020 seems so long ago.
No worries. No worries. No worries.
Yeah, and I hope you'll have a different way of setting up the survey next time, when you send it.
Yes. Well, yeah. For there's reasons why you do open-ended versus closed, and but we could talk about that in terms of methodology. Yes. But I know it made it a long survey for you, for all of the counties, and we greatly appreciate taking the time to do that. But since I was talking about San Mateo so much, I just wanted to give you space in case there's something you wanted to elaborate on. But anyway, we have a number of reports on our website. These two that I just mentioned, the primary and general on voter outreach and education. We have a large statewide report that has data for San Mateo County in its appendix that covers voting methods, rejection rates. Another report that covers registration, a conditional voter registration, provisional ballots, all of that with data specifically for San Mateo in its appendix. So I want to let folks know that there's a lot of data on our website that if you can't find it, you can email me, I can direct you, but you'll see some specific data for San Mateo County and nearly all of the reports, even if it's just a statewide report. So, if you have time in your very busy schedules and want to do a deep data wonk dive, it's there for you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much,
Sure.
Mindy. Hopefully we'll have you back soon with the San Mateo County specific results for 2020.
Yeah. Oh, and don't forget, there's also the voting location citing tool that's on our website. I know we've talked about it in the past, but it's been quite a while. That has demographic and voter data for San Mateo County. And we've been adding more voter data for different voter groups, more demographic data, breaking it out into many more groups than we previously had. If you ever just want to go, even if you're not involved in the citing process or citing conversations, you just want to go to the citing tool to click on San Mateo or any county, you can see all of that demographic and voter data there that I think can be enormously helpful for outreach and voter education efforts. So I just want to point that out too. And now I'm going to shut up.
Before you go though, I know that the county did contract you to do some San Mateo specific work. Jim, do you want to comment on when we can have access to that work? Jim, are you still on?
Yes, I am. It's getting the mute button off. That's my biggest challenge. We're hoping to get that out this month. We want to send out a report to the board and to other jurisdictions with Mindy's report. So we're working on that right now. So hopefully, within the next few weeks, you'll get that.
Great. Yeah, we'd love to see that before the election starts.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I'm gonna click off at a few minutes before 10 because of another meeting, and I hope I haven't taken too much of Sarah's time on the agenda. My apologies if I have.
No, thank you so much, Mindy. So just before we move into Sarah's report on the elections division update, I know Adria Orr has an announcement she wants to make, and I just wanted to get her in here so we don't run out of time. So go ahead, Adria.
Thanks so much, Diane. Just real quick, I just wanted to plug that Asian Law Caucus is going to be doing our poll monitoring program again in the June primary election. So for those of you that, y'all may or may not be familiar with our program, but basically we train volunteers. There's a mandatory 90-minute training, so no experience necessary, but we train our volunteers to go out in pairs and go to voting locations to just help check for the presence of different language materials, to gather information and observations on how different counties are kind of implementing those practices. And we try to use that information to help work in collaboration with counties to see if there's ways to help improve the experience of voters and et cetera. So I'm sure there's been lots of plugs for folks to sign up as poll workers, and if you can do that, you should do that. But if you don't have the time or capacity to do that, We're going to be sending folks out in the Bay Area and in the Northern Central Valley, all the way up from Fresno to Sacramento on the Saturday before Election Day, on Saturday, June 4th, as well as on Election Day. So I'll drop a link in the chat that has our landing page that has a little bit more information, as well as the link to apply. And if anybody is interested or has more questions, you can absolutely reach out, and I'm happy to connect. Thanks so much.
And we will send out a follow-up email, as we always do, and it will have the information that Adria just spoke about, as well as the link to the reports that Mindy just put in the chat, and a recording of this if you just want to go through the slides that Mindy just presented from the recording.
Okay, so Sarah, thank you for being so patient. So I will turn the meeting over to you for an elections division update.
And Jim may share my time if he so desires. I was going to give you kind of an overview here that we have 45 vote centers by the time all are open. We begin with 29 days before the election. Then we have, I think it's about 10 of the 11-day vote centers. And then we'll have 4-day vote centers, most of them June 4th through 7th. So at that time, 45 centers. There's also a mobile vote center. We did this in the last election, and two of the locations it's going to were from the last election, Half Moon Bay Airport for 2 days, and the Hillsdale Shopping Center for 2 days. We also have what we call pop-up voting locations. I think the pop-up means they're really 1 or 2 days. It looks like 2 days this time. East Palo Alto, La Honda, and Pescadero. I think they're called pop-up because they don't necessarily have every single item a vote center might have. So it's just a legal or a technicality that it's about the same, though. Of these vote centers, about 10 of them are different than the last time. And that includes, they may have not been used in 2020, or they may not have been used yet ever by us. But 35 of them are familiar locations. We don't make changes lightly. We like to stick to the same locations unless the room is not adequate. In some cases, it's that the room isn't available, there's construction going on, things like that. So there are reasons why they're changing. Let's see, in addition to the vote centers, we've got the drop boxes more than ever. We have 48 drop boxes. And with 48 of those drop boxes, I have to look at these numbers, it's 12, only 12 are inside drop boxes. And, I think that's significant because the outside drop boxes are available 24/7 until 8 p.m. election night. They'll open on May 9th. 9 of them are drive up, drop off. So again, mostly it's 36 outside drop boxes. I think most, again, are familiar locations, but we've added, of course, among those that are, let's see, significant additions might be Broadway and Burlingame, the Walgreens area, right off of California Drive, very convenient, non-government, all of the things that you've asked for before. We also have, I think, the Bellhaven Child Development Center. So those are some of the new locations. Let's see what else. Number 30 here I have. We have had postcards, and we'll have more postcards to all voters because that's our direct communication. We sent a first postcard about the beginning of April. Wait, was it only beginning of April? We also we sent the postcard about the election and a separate postcard about redistricting, because redistricting had personalized information, letting people know their new districts. There will be a postcard in mid-April going to all voters. Again, sort of reminder, this is coming up. May 9th, the ballots are going out. Just before that, April 28th, of course, sample ballots begin going out. So kind of a constant communication to all registered voters. And then in the end of May, we'll be sending out a postcard, most likely just to the people who haven't voted yet, to remind them that they have time still to turn in their ballot or go to a vote center. That list, of course, we can't quite time it so that a person who didn't vote the day before we mail it, they're going to get a postcard. So some people will say, but I did vote. I hope you all understand. Let's see, Jim, is there anything else that we wanted to talk about today?
Well, that was a very good comprehensive overview. There's a lot going on, of course, our student democracy program, also, volunteer efforts. We are in the midst of some pretty heavy recruitment. We still have a lot of positions to fill. We're doing very well, but help us get vote center representatives, vote by mail workers. There's flyers out in the newspapers and going to direct mailers, etc. In terms of our recruitment effort. Martin McTaggart and Travis and everybody in our office is available to assist in that process. That's probably one of the most important challenges we have now is to staff up. In terms of the services that we provide, it's important to also just announce, we have had a program for a long time that people do utilize. I don't know how well known it is, but it's our mobile voting. And that is if there is a senior or a person, that can't come to the center and does want to vote, at home and doesn't have an RAVBM, which is remote accessible vote by mail, we will bring voting to them. And so all it takes is just a call. Our folks go out to senior care facilities, hospitals, and folks who just do want to vote, on a machine, let's just say. So we have that service. We've provided it quite a bit, but folks who have taken advantage of it and the families that have been very, very appreciative. Of course, with the vote by mail model, people do have a ballot in their hands. They can vote in the ease and convenience of wherever they are at. But some people do want to have, that special care for whatever reason, if they want to vote on a machine. So just keep in mind that that's there. All it takes is a phone call to our elections office, and we will dispatch a crew to those facilities so people can vote. And that's it. I think Sarah did a great job, and we're plugging away. Help us on recruitments because we really do need more people.
I almost forgot to include that today there is a virtual poetry event. And this is by a young lady who is the Youth Poet Laureate for Daly City. And she has chosen to do an event where youth will be talking about participation in local politics. Now, I don't think she has too many poets for the topic, but she has a few. And anyone who can, show support to this young lady, we'd love to have you join. I put the web link up there. And I know the next thing to get to is, of course, materials. Our materials are basically now at the printer. We've got bookmarks coming, vote center Dropbox location flyers. Let's see, the handouts, the quarter sheets that you're all familiar with. Boy, it seems like we have just tons of things, I think, because we have them in so many languages now. But we should have materials available to be giving out next week. So I'll stay in touch with Petra, and we'll get that information out to everyone.
So is the best way to make a request to you regarding materials to send you an email?
Yep, email's great. You can call, but email is wonderful. I'll put my email up there in the chat if anybody needs it. And you can also just call the general number at the elections office and they'll transfer you to me. Especially if you need lots of things, I just make my best guess on how much we need. So, previous years of elections, we sort of guess. And so, somebody who has an unexpected need for 10,000 copies, we would love to hear about.
Okay. Is the vote center and Dropbox location flyer also at the printer?
Not quite, but I'm staring at it, making the last edits on it.
Okay, because even if we're not handing that out, it's good, especially if we're doing any outreach, to be able to highlight the vote centers and drop boxes that are in that neighborhood. Because even though you can go anywhere in the county, everyone's looking what's closest to my house, what's closest to my office.
Well, the League of Women Voters they send me an email in advance saying we want to put that info on our flyer, and I get them their specific area. So if anyone needs to know about their area, of course, it is on our website already. So, smcvote.org.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. So I guess we'll move along to the election education toolkit that Thrive has put together. So I'll turn it over to you, Yahira.
Hello, everybody. Hello again. So we have been working tirelessly to get everything together for this election education toolkit that Diane mentioned. If you are interested in obtaining these materials, I will put an Excel sheet in the chat, and you can fill it out and let us know what materials you need, what languages you need, if you want your logo on the materials. We'd love to know, because we are in the process of printing those out, and just hoping to get everything together by the end of the week.
Can you talk a little bit about the trifold? Because I'm not sure if everybody in the meeting is familiar with that.
Yes, of course. I will talk about the trifolds, because I maybe I didn't mention it before, but we're working on a brochure style toolkit that will contain all information that you need to reach out to people and talk to them about the election. It's an easy way for people to know when, why, how the election is important, where to vote, when it's happening. It's a really easy one-pager to give out to people or talk through with people that will contain all information on what will be on their ballot and how they can register to vote, just upon many things that encompasses voting. But we're hoping that this is an easy way to get people involved and educated about what's happening in this election. Let me find the Excel sheet and I will put in the link.
Yeah, because the other thing that's really cool about this trifold is it's something you can just be carrying with you. And, you may have an impromptu conversation with someone about the election, and it's nice to have all that information handy.
Yes, exactly. I know some of the people on this call have already showed interest in obtaining the trifold. Just know that it's coming. We're working on getting everything together. Here it is. So
haven't let us know yet that you want to have some information with your own logo on it. Make sure to let Yahira know today, because we are building that up.
Okay. So Yahira, are you trying to pull up the picture of the trifold?
No, not at the moment, but I just put an Excel sheet in the chat. I can pull up the trifold in just
so people get again, not everybody in the meeting has seen it.
Yes, exactly. Good idea, Diane.
Yes,
here, let me see. And it's exciting if you're doing this outreach and you're out there talking to people. Take some pictures. We want to see, post it on social media, tag Thrive. We want to see what you're up to. I'm going to share my screen in just a second. Please let me know if you can see it.
You can. We're also happy to give them to you in a generic form or in a electronic form.
Here it is. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so as you can see, the front page will be why to vote. There's many reasons why it's important to vote, but we're emphasizing why it's important to vote in this primary election. And then we'll go over how to vote, and it has all the different options here and all the links to various resources. And then we're asking people if they have a voting plan, just making sure that they know when to vote, how to vote, and where to vote. And all of that is covered in the second page here, which is the inside of the trifold. And as you can see, it has important dates, important information like who is eligible to vote and where to learn more. These QR codes and links all lead to pages that are very helpful. As Sarah mentioned, SMC Vote is our favorite place to go. We also have the place where people can register to vote here below. We also have linked Voters Edge so people can learn about what will be on their ballot. I will stop sharing. Does anybody have any questions? Any comments?
Well, see, Pam had a question about which item, where can you put your logo? Why don't you go ahead and explain what you're looking for, Pam?
Pam, you're on mute.
I forgot how to work it. Good morning, everybody. Were you talking about two different items, the toolkit and this item, or is this the toolkit? And which item could you have your logo on it?
Yes, thank you. So the toolkit is this brochure that I just showed you all, but we are also in the toolkit box.
Good. That is one portion of the toolkit. So for people who have the whole toolkit, there are like 7 or 8 different items in the toolkit in addition to this. So the toolkit is a stipend program, and we still have room if anybody would like to be a part of that. But for this particular thing, if anybody just wants this with their logo on it, we're happy to do that as part of our outreach.
I'm looking on the website. I know I've gotten a lot of emails from you, but I'm looking on the website, and where is that information on the program is just closing your training?
So you're talking about the one with the stipend and the toolkit?
That you just need to reach out to Yahaira. She'll tell you all about it.
Yeah.
And yet,
I would say, yeah, definitely reach out to me if you're interested. I'm happy to go over more closely about the toolkit, but I'm pulling up Thrive's YouTube page because we had a voter outreach training that talked about the toolkit, and we have the recording up on our YouTube page, Pam, if you're interested in hearing more specifically about the toolkit. And this was for the purpose of people attending to learn more about the toolkit and learn about what they're receiving in the future.
thanks, Yahaira. So with the time remaining, it would be nice if we could go around and have different folks talk about what their current plans are for voter outreach, so that we can see where there's some synergy or where other organizations can be of assistance. So who would like to start? Or shall I call on someone?
I'll be
Marty?
brave and start.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah.
See, we'll go to it. I've narrowed down my focus just to the Bellhaven neighborhood. And there are actually 3 organizations here that we're working together to do outreach, and most of it will be door to door. Although there will be signage and some at the farmers market on Sunday. There's also a group that walks on Saturday mornings, and I'm going to talk them into handing out flyers. And that's it.
I can go next if you want. Hi.
Go for it, Marty.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you, Pam. Hi. And we are really looking forward to working with you in particular in Bellhaven. and with everybody. So we have Debbie Mayo, who is on our voter services team, here on the call with me today. And for anyone who doesn't know, we're with League of Women Voters with South San Mateo County. So, so we are focusing on our 3 neighborhood targeted areas of North Fair Oaks and Redwood City, the Bellhaven area in Menlo Park, and East Palo Alto. So again, looking forward to working with Pam. We'd love to cross over with you on canvassing. We have materials that we can share. We have a team of Latinas in Action, and then some youth organizers as well that we're asking to help with distribution of materials, canvassing, all that kind of stuff. And we are looking to do phone banking into the area and everything. And this is up for all 3 areas, but again, we love working with Pam, so thanks. So I think the main thing at this point, Debbie has done a lot of materials for us. We're really pleased. So I don't think we'll need much more, but we may tap Thrive or the elections office for more materials as needed. We're planning to do phone banking. And I think one major concept I just wanted to throw out there for everybody was that we were hoping to do most of our outreach before May 9th. You know, sort of like before ballots started dropping or being mailed out. But we're just finding that I think everybody is just really far behind. So like, I don't know, maybe it's just us, but we feel like with our materials and our funding and everything is just not far behind, but just we're planning to probably do more after May 9th now than we thought we would, but we feel like that's okay. We'll do some phone banking and change the messaging, and we're still going to be doing outreach and get your ballots in, but it's just going to be, you know, in the next month or I mean, after May 9th. So we're hoping that's okay. We're hoping it will still be effective because we still have a lot of stuff going, just maybe moving a little. So if anyone has comments on that or what their timeframes look like, we'd appreciate it. And that's about it. I don't know if Debbie wanted to add anything from us, but otherwise that's, we're in the works. So thanks for everybody's support.
Thanks, Marty. Anyone else? Andrea, Ben? Do you have any updates?
Sure, I guess I'll just say that we're joining Thrive and other organizations with the community, with the candidate forums that Petra spoke about earlier. And then we were also, I was gonna check with CID to see if we can incorporate those toolboxes that Thrive had. To incorporate that into our outreach, to have it all outreach events and encourage our community, disabled community, to get out and vote.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrea and I'm with Youth Leadership Institute. You may have heard us present at the last meeting and with our current efforts. Mari, I feel you about catching up, playing catch up right now and getting all the materials and the rollout going on. So we have 2 youth groups. One is centered in Daly City and the other one is across San Mateo County within like East Palo Alto, Redwood City, and San Mateo. And so with both of those youth groups, we are planning to build out a social media campaign series that promotes like how to register to vote, why vote, and we are looking for, if you are connected with youth leaders from your areas, we would love to like capture their voice on screen and form videos of why it's important to get the youth vote out there. And so I would love to connect with you all. And if you also need folks to come out to be, canvassing, we also have Youth Power too, that are more than happy to step up. And yeah, there's a lot of, and then we're also partnering with Strive to carry out the candidate forums as well.
Anyone else?
Maybe I'll just also quickly plug.
Okay. Go
Asian
right
Law
ahead.
Thanks. Asian Law Caucus is, we don't do as much, kind of direct voter outreach, but we are creating some voter outreach and education materials that we're translating. So there will be some flyers available. They're not quite ready yet, which is why I don't have a link to share, but I will certainly share it out with Thrive when I have it. Materials will be translated into Chinese, Khmer, Hmong, Korean, Lao, let me look at my list, Punjabi, Tagalog, and Vietnamese. And then we are also partnering with the League of Women Voters California to help translate some of their social media that is kind of supplemental to the Easy Voter Guide stuff that they do. And so that'll be coming out, hopefully should be ready next week, and that will be in Chinese, Korean, Tagalog, and Vietnamese.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I see Mike has a question or a comment.
Yeah, I'm just similar to Ben. I'm working on candidate forums. A couple of groups are also doing the District 2 and 3 Board of Supervisors candidates, Kevin Mullen's seat in the Assembly, et cetera, not just Sheriff and Jackie Spear. I'm wondering who would know the answer to this. Somebody wants to find out their new districts, not just for House, but for Assembly, Senate, et cetera, Board of Supervisors. Is there something that is not just a map? Like you punch in your address or your zip code or both, and you actually get a district and maybe even what candidates are running for what in that district for, say, Assembly or Board of Supervisors, State Senate.
Do you want to answer that, Sarah?
My understanding, and I know, Mike, a postcard probably was not the most helpful item for you, but we did do the mailing with the postcard, giving each person who's registered their districts, explaining it's their new districts. My understanding, and Hillary can correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you go to our website to My Election Info, you'll be able to, excuse me, find the information there, or just call our office and we'll look it up for you. Of course, that, you can leave a message if it's in the evening.
That's something I can do. I can certainly do that. But
What's that, Mike?
If I want to tell other people how to do it, is that really the best way?
To call us would probably be a good way to do it, unless, Hillary, do you have another answer?
There is a lookup tool on our website.
It is there.
And
Okay.
you put in, it's a kind of an extensive GIS program. You type in your address and it will give you your districts.
Yeah, it's a little tricky. So you go to smcvote.org, you click on redistricting, and then there'll be a little search box in the upper left-hand corner where you put in your address. What's not always completely clear is how you get the little pop-up to come up, and you can scroll through it because each pop-up will show you a different district. So like it'll show you your congressional district, and a different one will show you your assembly district, and the next one will show you your supervisorial. So
right, you have to click each window, and I think we put some instructions where we say you have to click through each window to see each district. But yeah, I was the same way. I went to it and I'm like, I can't find it. I don't even know where I live. I can't find me. Yeah, so it is not intuitive.
Right. And you can do it from a keyboard, or do you need a mouse?
I would imagine you could probably tab. I'd have to play around with it. It might be kind of limited in that way, unfortunately.
Okay. I just didn't know because it's still a little bit before the election if anything had been implemented yet.
Yeah,
okay. I'll discuss it more tomorrow. We have our VEOAC meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I would advise everybody to spend a little time getting familiar with it. So, because it's like you have to try it yourself before you can easily explain it to someone else how to do it.
Sure.
But it's pretty good because it gets you exactly to, based on your specific address.
Mike, I'll play around with it today and see how much I can do without the mouse.
Yeah, I'm just curious if we can get more questions answered tomorrow, whether from you or Sarah or somebody. One of the things I was going to bring up at our VEOAC meeting tomorrow.
Anything anything else?
Mike, so you know that Sarah put in the link of how to look up your district into the chat. We'll make sure to put that in the follow-up email as well.
Okay.
We're just gonna say that the DO network, the Disability Organizers Network, is going to, which I'm part of through CID, is going to put together a training on redistricting and working with representatives. So I don't know if it'll completely answer Mike's questions, but we are putting together training on that.
Ben, when is that training?
In development.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's in development right now. I can get those dates and I can put it out to the group.
Yeah, feel free to email it to me and I can include it in the follow-up.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we get an extra 5 minutes to go work on voter outreach. Our next meeting is May 18th. And thank everybody for coming, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks, y'all.